respected Dr. Saxena, distinguished panelists on the dais, and a very distinguished audience. Dr. Saxena raised few important questions. What is a truly global school? What should be the relevance of management education? And why has the top schools in India not reached out to the world market? The value of Indian experience, and also the role of ranking and accreditations. And when we look at the higher education context in India, what we find is India is vastly underrepresented in the global 2014 rankings of universities. Only 4 Indian universities, along with 6 IITs, featured in the list of top 100 Asia in 2014. Clearly, universities in India have not made the desired mark of being centers of excellence in the areas of technology, science or management. And the majority of them have actually become merely degree granting institutions. The IITs, the IIMs and the Indian Institute of Science and now the IISERs probably are doing a better job and are getting increasing global recognition. It may be interesting to note that each of these institutions are independent, unlike the university or the faculty departments in the universities. 2 of the IIMs, as was pointed out, feature in the Financial Times top 100 world B-school rankings, which testifies the fact that we are capable of building institutions of global repute. While the government desires to create more centers of excellence like the IITs and the IIMs, such efforts entail considerable commitment of resources. And that is where Professor Velamuri talked about the private sector. We can assume, however, that going forward, the agenda of the government would be growth and development, and the focus will be on effective execution. For India to emerge as global destination for management education by 2025, and I compliment Dr. Chaturvedi and Amit for coming up with the vision document of creating 50 global B schools in India that will provide the directional push which is required to be supported by effective execution. I wanted to present 5 ideas that can make India a global destination for management education. One of them has already been touched upon by Professor Velamuri, that is internationally benchmarked governance. So I will not touch upon that. The first one that I will talk about, and that is about developing smart education cities. We talked about having 100 smart cities in the union budget. We can also think of developing smart education cities. As education, and not just management education, is interdisciplinary in nature, it would be ideal to have high-end institutions of science, technology, management, medicine and liberal arts located at one place while protecting and nurturing their individual identities. Professor Delport talked about the STEM institutions. As an example, one could look at institutions like the IITs, IISER, IIMs and the AIMS, or their private sector equivalents like the BITS, TIFR, SPJIMR, CMC Vellore, etc. as part of an education city. Presently, these institutions, even when located within the state, are separated by considerable distance. For example, if you look at Bengal, IIT is in Kharagpur, IIM is in Joka, and IISER is in Kalyani, and the distance from Joka to Kharagpur is as good as Mumbai to Singapore. I mean the time taken. The government will set up an education authority of India to create and maintain the infrastructure for such city, including security, transportation and utilities. The Indian police services can have a cadre specialized for such cities. The private sector can participate in the social infrastructure like schools, shopping, clubs, cultural centers, shopping facilities, etc. This will help create the soft infrastructure critical to attract high quality faculty and students from across the globe. Professor Velamuri talked about these kind of infrastructures which can attract the younger generation. The second idea is to develop an agenda, an action agenda, and that's the key word, to achieve, in the Indian context, sustainability through distributive justice.
Conventional management education has long focused on competitive advantage and profit maximization. The context of the developing world, like India, is significantly different in terms of issues like poverty, social inequity, etc. Indian B schools globally can lead the way through practical demonstration of impact. We have talked about the UT Dallas Top 24. These are welcome, but we should probably focus more on the action, that is practical demonstration of impact that can be made with models that promote sustainability through distributive justice. SPJIMR, for example, has an Abhuya initiative where MBA students mentor underprivileged children studying in municipal schools of Mumbai, and that can be taken as an example of action-oriented Indian model, which has not only created an impact but also has received global recognition, being awarded the GMAT Met Fund. And even for the Delport talked about humanity-minded as one of the first points when he mentioned about the reforms that are required. Actions that like this will not only benefit the society at large, but also would make students experience the joy of contribution, promoting the ideals of cooperation, contribution, and non-self-centeredness for which the Indian philosophy stands for. And that something can attract the international faculty or students to India. We may not duplicate the same thing which is being offered elsewhere. We should have our own differentiation. The third aspect Professor Madhukar touched about, and that's my third idea, creating a mentor-facilitated learning model. Taking advantage of the shift from teacher as a source of classroom-centric knowledge to mentor as a facilitator for learning. Ancient India identifies 4 sources of education through which learning takes place. It says 1/4 of learning is done when the knowledge is imparted by the teacher to a student. 1/4 of the learning is by learners' self-study and reflection. That is where the peer learning comes in. That is the third point. 1/4 comes as a result of the peer interaction, and the last 1/4 comes from the time context. So the classroom or the knowledge which is imparted by the teacher is only 1/4 of the total learning, but we have given so much of importance to that. Going forward, one can envision that knowledge will be acquired through multiple media, open Coursera, MOOCs, etc., and not necessarily restricted to classroom teaching. Technology will also bridge the gap between the developed and the developing world. The role of faculty will be that of a mentor to facilitate peer-driven experiential learning through projects, field experiences, and practicums, where diversity and the Indian context can be a major advantage and attraction to the global audience. Such action-led field experiences can also be a source of action research, which will throw up opportunities for collaboration with leading international B schools. And Professor Saxena actually talked about the India experience, and this can provide the India experience. This will attract faculty from leading global institutions to visit India and work jointly with their Indian counterparts, which will improve both research output and lead to collaborative teaching, which will also improve the teaching effectiveness. Such visiting international faculty who will come to India can also become champions or brand ambassadors to promote the Indian B school in their home institution, which can further deepen the relationship with things like global field experience, joint programs, exchange opportunities, etc. I was in Cornell last June, and Professor Soumitra Datta, the dean, was saying that the Cornell's dual degree program with Tsinghua University in China is an outcome of the efforts of Professor Ya Ru Shen at Cornell's Johnson School, who is now the academic director of the China Initiative. SPJIMR's proposed collaboration with Darden School of Business at University of Virginia is also an outcome of similar efforts of an internal champion within Darden. The fourth idea I would like to talk about is an inside-out approach to promote brand India as a global destination. Going forward, the top Indian management institutions will need to find ways to collaborate as a group to represent India as a destination for management education to the outside world. India has demonstrated this in the IT sector, and it is time to do the same for management education. This will also increase the diversity. Right now, of course, because of the increased demand, there was no reason to do that. Top business schools in India need to create their own differentiated model, which will eventually be recognized and appreciated by global stakeholders. For example, GMSE plans to work with select Indian B schools to create customized GMAT for Indian applicants whose course will also be globally accepted. Similarly, top Indian B schools as a group can engage with international accrediting agencies to create an accreditation process which is relevant to the Indian context and acceptable to the global audience. We need to do the same with the ranking agencies so that parameters used for ranking fairly reflects the strength of an institution in the larger global context and are more inclusive. The vision for modern Indian education was laid way back in 1901 by Rabindranath Tagore when he established the ashram in Shantiniketan. He envisioned an education that was deeply rooted in one's immediate surroundings and community, but connected to the cultures of the wider world. Tagore envisioned the coexistence of Kala Bhavan with Shilpo Sadan and initiated global thinking by attracting scholars from across the world. Way back in 1930s, the China Bhavan in Shantiniketan was established. Today we are at the crossroads when it comes to management education in India. On one hand, globally, questions are being raised about the relevance of management education being imparted in some of the leading global schools. On the other hand, MBA degree remains the dream of an increasing base of students in the developing world, like in India, where managerial positions are opening up faster than they can be filled. Some of the top Indian B schools have demonstrated and effectively executed a model that is a blend of global relevance and Indian realities, which is appropriate for our times and context. And that is the inner strength that powers mission-driven schools. Examples can be like an XLRI or an SPJIMR. What is required going forward is to communicate effectively such models to the global audience. And I think that is something on which the top Indian schools will need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you.